Hey there everybody, how you doing? I am Francis and welcome back to another top 10 list. Today we're going to pick my top 10 games from my favorite RPG series, Final Fantasy. As always with these top 10 lists, I'll only be covering games that I have only played, which is only Final Fantasy 1 up to 10, plus a few sequels as well as the first two Dissidia games. Also, just like any top 10 list, this is based off my own personal experiences, so please don't be offended if your favorites don't make the list or get ranked lower than you would expect. Now with all that being said and without any further ado, let's get started with the list. Number 10, Final Fantasy VIII. And honestly, it pains me to put this game at the bottom of this list, but I gotta be fair here. Like I talked about from my Let's Play this series, this game did do a lot of things that I liked, but it also did a whole bunch of things that I didn't like. I do like how the monsters level up with you, making this more of a strategy game instead of grinding to overpower your enemies. The junctioning system can make you overpowered as hell if you have the right magic junction. The triple triad card game is extremely addictive, at least until you're introduced to the quest world and it can die in a fire. And I like how the GFs have their own separate HP and you can bond with them. Now with that being said, let's talk about what I don't like about this game. One thing I don't like about this game is the limit to magic you can hold. If you don't have enough magic to modify it, you have to hold on to it. Like there is no way at all you can discard any magic that you draw, and that honestly annoys me. This game does have a pretty interesting story. At least until time travel and time compression is introduced, and then the story just makes my brain hurt. Artemisia just comes out of nowhere, and her goal and her motives to her goal are really unclear. Like she wants to compress time, but why? Now I know that there is a lot of bad in this game, but there's also enough good in this game to at least give it a try at least once, which is why it made it on this list. Number 9, Final Fantasy V. This game was special for many reasons. For one, it had, in my opinion, the best soundtrack of the series, and it was also the final Final Fantasy game with the medieval theme, and the last game that focused around crystals. This game also brought back the job class feature that Final Fantasy III introduced us to, but unlike Final Fantasy III, it did it so much better by letting you carry over abilities to other classes. This game also had an interesting cast of characters. You got the adventurer Bart, who loves to adventure. You got the Princess Lena, who set out to find her missing father, who went to check on the ring crystal. You have Galuf, who lost his memory, and you got the pirate Forrest, who honestly was the only character in this game that I actually enjoyed. Which is the reason why I ranked it so low. Like, the game story was actually pretty decent. It was honestly pretty challenging, but the fact that there was only one character that I honestly grew attached to is why it ranked so low on this list. Good job on fixing the job class though, Square Enix. I appreciate that. Number 8, Final Fantasy I. You guys knew this game was going to be on this list. You can't make a top 10 list without including the game that started the series, and Final Fantasy is no exception. Now this game is more special than just starting Square Enix's most successful series. This game also saved Square Enix from going out of business, which is a big part of why I ranked it where it is. This game was pretty much where the turn-based battle system RPGs began. I liked how this game lets you choose any 4 characters at the start of the game, and you had to commit to that team for the rest of the game. This was the start of something wonderful. Number 7, Final Fantasy IV, The After Years. This is the sequel to Final Fantasy IV that was released as a part of the Final Fantasy IV collection for the PSP. This game takes place 10 years after the original Final Fantasy IV. The crystals are once again being threatened by a mysterious woman who has the same power Rydia does to summon the Eidolons. This game also has a long list of characters, and this game has 10 chapters. My biggest complaint with this game is that the story is mostly a copy and paste of the original Final Fantasy IV. A second moon appears in the sky, the King of Baron mysteriously turns evil, steals the world's crystal, Kain turns against you, and pretty much every story has events that happen the same way it did in the original. My favorite parts about this game are the band commands, which are pretty much a team attack, Gobez being a playable character, Kain turning into a Holy Dragoon, and Gobez's sacrifice to wake up Cecil. Number 6. Final Fantasy Dissidia Duodecim 012. There are 2 Dissidia games for the PSP, and this one was much better than the original, so I picked this one. So Dissidia is a Final Fantasy game focused on the main heroes and villains of the main titles, locked in an endless struggle between the war between Cosmos and Chaos, the gods of destruction and harmony. The battle system took me a while to get the hang of, but once I got used to it, the game was actually pretty fun. My only complaint with this game is that the story mode solely focuses on the heroes. If you want to level up the villains, you gotta do countless one-on-one matches. One feature that I'm glad this game had is that you could transfer your Dissidia save data over to Dissidia 012, so you don't have to worry about having to level up your older characters all over again. Dissidia 012 has the same story as the original Final Fantasy Dissidia, but it adds on to it. So I don't really know if I would call this a prequel, a sequel, or a revamp, because the 012 story is before the original, and the 013 story is the original story. Also, if you play the demo, you can unlock Aerith as an assist character. Number 5. Final Fantasy X. There was so much about this game that I enjoyed, and I don't really know where to begin. How about we begin with the storytelling, huh? The story in this game was told perfectly, and every question this game has given you has been answered. For example, the connection between the Dream Xanarkin and Spira, how Sin keeps coming back, how Jet became Sin. Also, I love this game's battle system. Not only could you change allies mid-battle, but the encounters require you to do so, because each character has an ability that helps you against certain monsters. For example, only Tidus can hit the fast-moving enemies, Lulu takes care of magic, Yuna is a healer and a summoner, Wakka hits the flying enemies, Orange for the high defense enemies, and Riku can take apart robots. Speaking about Yuna and summons, I love that this game lets you actually control your Aeons in battle. The Spirit Grid till this day is one of my favorite methods of leveling up. I would have ranked this higher if it wasn't for the Cloister Trials, see more fluffs, and to get the ultimate weapons, you gotta do this, and let's not forget this. Also, I would have ranked it higher, but Final Fantasy X-2 happened, and that just kind of ruined the story of this one for me a little bit. Number 4. Final Fantasy VII. And honestly, this one shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. This is, without any doubt, the most iconic game in the Final Fantasy series. When you hear Final Fantasy, this is probably the game that pops up into your head. Just like how Sonic Adventure, Super Mario 64, and Ocarina of Time transferred their series to the 3D universe, this game did the same for Final Fantasy. The materia system was a unique idea for abilities, but my only problem with that is that it didn't make anybody really feel special or stand out because everybody could do basically everything. I'm not saying anything is wrong with the cast of characters in this game. There's actually a lot of characters in the game I enjoy. I'm just saying that with everybody basically having the ability to do, well, basically everything if they have the right materia equipped, it just didn't make really anybody feel special. This game also introduced us to limit breaks, which I love the idea of having a final blow, and I'm glad that limit breaks remained a thing after this game. My only problem with limit breaks in this game is that once you have your limit break full, you can't attack anymore. I'm glad that Final Fantasy VIII fixed that. This game had an amazing story to tell, and I really enjoyed the story of this game. Sephiroth is a badass villain, and Cloud and his story and everything going on in his head was very interesting that I did not see coming the first time I played this game. One of my favorite things to do with this game was raising chocobos and taking them to the races. Number 3. Final Fantasy IV. This was, without any question, the game that put Final Fantasy on the map. This was the first ever heavily story-driven RPG game. You follow the journey of a dark knight named Cecil, who rebels against his home kingdom after he was sent to destroy Mist, and tries to save the world's crystals from his home kingdom. My favorite character in this game is Rydia. Why, you ask? Well, because she's a summoner, but she's also a black mage. How many black mage summoners can you name? Exactly. This game was also the beginning of the active time battle system, which really made this franchise shine, and this has become a staple for the series, at least until after Final Fantasy X. Each character in this game also gets special abilities that match their classes. For example, Ken can jump, Cecil can protect his allies, Edge can throw throwable items, Callum and Porum can use twin magic, and Edward, well, does this. This game changed the series forever and will forever be one of my personal favorites. Number 2, Final Fantasy IX. As you guys know, I am a big story person, and that is a big part of the reason why I hold this game so high. This game was perfect when it comes to storytelling, and brought back the medieval theme that Square Enix abandoned back in Final Fantasy V. You play as a thief named Zidane, a member of the Tantalus gang who kidnapped the Princess of Alexandria. Little did Zidane know, though, that this would lead him on an adventure tracing back to his birth. One thing this game did great was character development. Each character was important in their own way and developed more as the story went on. For example, Vivi learned about death, Steiner learned to think for himself instead of blindly following orders, Zidane learned about love, and Amarant learned about teamwork. This game also brought back the elements of Final Fantasy IV with character classes. For example, only Vivi could use black magic, Freya could jump, Zidane could steal, Amarant could throw, and Quina could eat. I also loved how you learned the abilities in this game. Like, mostly you just level up and then eventually you just learn a skill, right? Well, with this game, you learned your abilities through the equipment you had, which I thought was a pretty interesting idea. One of my biggest gripes with this game is the trance system. I told you guys before how I love limit breaks in these games, right? And normally in Final Fantasy games, I try to reserve my limit breaks for the boss. But with the trance system, you can't do that. Once you got it, it automatically activates and that's it. After that battle, it's back empty. It annoys me having to waste the trance against a monster like a goblin. But besides that little gripe, I don't really have any problems with this game, and I love this game, and I honestly cannot wait to play this game. And that brings us on to number 1. And I think you guys know what this is. 3, 2, 1. That's right, number 1, Final Fantasy VI. There is just so much I love about this game that I don't even know where to begin. Besides the optional characters, every character had a tragic backstory. Locke felt like he abandoned his girlfriend, Terra was used as a biological weapon, Cells was raised as a war machine, Cian's family died, and Shadow left his daughter because of his dark past. This game has a large roster of characters. Aside from Final Fantasy IV The After Years, this game has the largest cast of characters. I like how this game makes you think you're heading into the final battle when you get to the floating island. And then the game throws you for a loop as Kefka destroys the world using the statues and you realize your adventure just began. That's right, the villain actually wins in this game. In every game or every story, you hear about villains only talking about world domination, only to either ultimately fail or come so close, only to fail. Kefka actually went and did it. My only problem with this game is the same problem I had with all of the 2D Final Fantasy games. And that is, that's right, you guys guessed it, the high encounter rate. My god, I would like to take more than 2 or 3 steps without being thrown into a random encounter. I always found it weird in other video games how characters who are supposed to be normal humans can suddenly use magic. In this game though, that's not an issue. You learn your magic from Magicite, which is the remain of Esther's, which are your summoning creatures in this game. Now remember when we got to Final Fantasy VII how I mentioned that the fact that everybody can basically do everything that none of the characters in that game feel special? I know some people want to make the case of that for this game because everybody can use magic, but that's not entirely the case. Each character has an ability that nobody else can use. For example, Strago can use blue magic, Cian can use sword techniques, Locke can steal, Terra can turn into her Esper form, Cells can use the Runic Blade, Sabin can use Blitz and suplex a freaking train, and Edgar has a bunch of tools he could use. I could go on singing the praises of this game, but I think at this point I made my point and I'm just going to end here, okay? And there you guys go, guys. That is my top 10 list for Final Fantasy. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you guys agree or disagree with anything I said, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. As always, the comment section is a judgment-free zone for you guys, where you guys can express yourselves without the fear of being judged. While you're at it, why not tell me your favorites of the series? I always love hearing what you guys have to say. Also, if there's any other top 10 lists you guys would like to see me make, feel free to let me know in the comments. I have many other top 10 lists in the works right now currently, but it'll take some time to get those out to you guys because these take forever for me to put together. But you guys will see them when you guys see them. I would like to thank you all for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a nice day. Bye, everybody.